Hello friends, welcome back to the Generation Strength YouTube channel. First things first, please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave any comments or suggestions you guys have for future videos. That way we can keep putting these videos together for you guys week to week. So 2 weeks ago, we posted up an SSB video, right, about this thing right here, safety squat bar, and how you can use this bar to complement your squat training or your deadlift training, right? This bar is very versatile. We can use it a number of ways in our training, just depends on what your goals are. So kind of piggybacking, Jesus Christ, off that video, in terms of using the SSB for complementing your squat, right? We talked about how when we use the SSB for strengthening our squat, we want to resist that rounding over that happens when we put this bar on our back, and we want to force ourselves to maintain that upright, neutral posture going down into a squat pattern, right? Because that's what's going to help us stay strong under a straight bar on our back, is being able to resist that feeling of getting rounded over in the bottom of our squat. So today we're going to talk about accessories that essentially can do the same thing, right? Because if we're training efficiently, if we're training intelligently, we're not going to do all of our training under a barbell. We're going to have some lower tier exercises that help complement the secondary movements that complement the primary movements in our training. And if you are a powerlifter and you are training for a powerlifting competition, right, there is not going to be a lot of room in your program for simple isolation exercises like leg curls, leg extensions, things like that, right? Our main goal is not muscular hypertrophy. There is a place for it in your program if you are a powerlifter, don't get me wrong, but as a powerlifter, your goal is going to be more so global strength. And what I mean by global strength, I didn't come up with this term, by the way. Global strength means that we are checking multiple boxes off with one exercise. So that means that if we're talking about how we use the SSB last week for our squat training, I'm going to pick an accessory movement that forces me to focus on maintaining an upright, strong T-spine while also training my legs at the same time. So if we're talking about hack squats, leg extensions, things like that, we don't accomplish that with those movements. So today we're going to show you some really simple movements that help us accomplish global strength and help us accomplish an upright posture while we're going through a squat pattern. All right guys, so I'm gonna be a little bit lazy because we were actually gonna post this in the SSB video 2 weeks ago and we just didn't really feel like filming anymore. First exercise we're gonna talk about today is gonna be an SSB front squat. My first choice is gonna be a normal straight bar front squat, but realistically speaking, a lot of powerlifters can't get into this front rack position for an actual front squat. So it's a lot easier to program an SSB front squat, especially if we're talking about bigger guys like me. So really simple. So we have an SSB here. So the SSB is going to be set up normal in the rack. It's going to be facing forward. Handles are facing away from you. You just make sure these handles are tight on the bar. And all we're going to do is we're going to tilt the SSB back towards us. We're going to get under it like so, just like a normal front squat. And from there, everything is the same, right? So we want to focus on maintaining that upright posture, right? Keeping those elbows high. We want to make sure that we're not super extended at the torso and we're just squatting down, just like a normal squat pattern here, right? You can see immediately when I come down, this bar wants to dump forward. So the goal is keeping that torso strong, keeping that T-spine upright. So we can see there, even though that's not a typical straight bar front squat, right, we can still see that that bar wants to dump forward towards the bottom. So if I'm relaxed or lazy while maintaining that strong upright posture and keeping my torso stacked, right, that bar is going to dump forward just like it would with a normal front squat. So it's not quite the same thing as an actual front squat. I know a lot of people like to bitch about the difference between the two, but it's still accomplishing the goal. And it's a self-fixing exercise, right? So if you're somebody that has issues of dumping forward in the bottom or not staying stacked coming down, right? If you use a straight bar or an SSB and do a front squat with it, you're gonna figure out really quick where your positioning needs to change during the lift. So SSB front squats, exercise number 1 for maintaining upright posture for the squat. All right guys, so the next movement we're gonna show is going to be a goblet squat or a kettlebell front rack squat. So essentially the same thing. One movement is just done with a dumbbell and the other is done with 2 kettlebells. So pretty straightforward, right? Holding the dumbbell in the goblet position, which is just in front of our body here, right? Just below the chin. From there straightforward. So this dumbbell, with it being in front of our body, right? There's gonna be that same intention of preventing ourselves from rounding over during the squat pattern, right? And maintaining that upright torso during the squat. So we can easily get a lot more out of a goblet squat by simply elevating our heels, whether it's on the edge of a platform like this, or if you have a slant board, or even plates, or if you have an elevated shoe already that you use for squats as is. So I'm standing on the edge of a deadlift platform, and makes it a lot easier to get that forward knee travel and that upright posture that we're talking about, and kind of drive more into the quads and emphasize a little bit more on that quad hypertrophy that we might be looking for from using a goblet squat. Personally, I like doing the kettlebell front rack squat a lot more. I think it's a little bit more challenging. It's a little bit harder to cheat. With a goblet squat, we can sometimes see people kind of letting the dumbbell drift away from their body, which kind of lets them sit back and lean over a little bit more towards the bottom, right? That's not what we want, right? With a goblet squat, we're trying to keep that close to our body here, keep the hips stacked underneath us, and stay upright all the way through. So if we're having trouble with nailing that intention, right, we can try the kettlebell front rack squat here. Bring the kettlebells up into a front rack position, right? Close our hands together. And now already I can feel my abs working a lot harder to brace and hold this in place, right? And I can feel my upper back working as well. So this is just essentially a regressed version of a front squat, right? So same rules apply, right? I'm not letting those elbows dip down. I'm not letting myself round over. So I'm holding that T-spine strong, nice neutral tall posture, hips stacked underneath me. So 2 easy variations right there. Goblet squat, right? You find that it's easy to cheat that movement. Then the double kettlebell front rack squat, whatever the hell you want to call it, is a nice step up from that. A little bit harder on the core, right? A little bit more work in the upper back to maintain that upright posture. So exercise number 2. All right guys, so last exercise of the day is going to be a sandbag Zercher squat. A little bit of a step up from our goblet squat and our kettlebell front rack squat that we showed, and also my personal favorite out of the 3 movements here. So like as we talked about with the goblet squat, it can be easy to cheat, right? It can be something where we kind of lose that positioning a little bit. We lose that focus of maintaining that upright posture. Sometimes when we see people do a goblet squat, they let that dumbbell drift away from the body, they let the hips drift back, and they lose that brace. So some cueing we can think about here along with these movements and just squatting in general is that when we're setting our brace and we're kind of setting that stacked hips and torso, the distance from here, the top of my hips and my rib cage, right? When I set my brace, the distance between those 2 points should not change when I'm squatting, right? So if I'm here and I'm about to break into that squat pattern, the first thing that happens is boom, right? That distance definitely changed, right? Which means I'm losing my brace. So this is why I like the sandbag Zercher squat, because as soon as I pick up that sandbag, I'm essentially forced to mold myself around the sandbag, which if you look at me, I'm naturally an extended posture type person where, right, my hips are tilted forward, I'm up here at the chest, right, so you can see this extension posture in my lower back. As soon as I grab that sandbag, 1, the weight is heavy enough, and 2, the way I have to hold it immediately forces me into that ideal squat position, right? So That makes this what we call a self-fixing exercise, like we call the SSB front squat or a normal front squat, where when I do the movement, I'm forced into that correct position and I'm gonna feel what an ideal squat pattern should feel like, and we're checking multiple boxes at once, right? I'm strengthening my upper back, I'm strengthening my core to hold myself upright, and I'm descending into a full squat. Since everything is taken care of up top, I'm able to hit a full depth squat because I'm not limited at the hips or the ankles, right? So grab the sandbag, just like I said, kind of in a position where I'm forced to mold myself around the sandbag, right? And now I'm stacked at the hips and the torso, right? So all I need to do is focus on holding that sandbag upright and not letting myself dump down. Nice full depth squat. I stay stacked the whole time, right? I can't cheat the movement and dump forward like this because I'm gonna lose the fucking sandbag and I'm gonna turn it into a good morning, right? So there you have it. Like I said, that's my favorite out of the three, just because it's the hardest, it's the most challenging, and of course, if your gym allows it, if you have the sandbags that allow you to do it, it's the exercise out of these three at least that you can load the most weight on. So there you have it. Exercise number 3 of the day, sandbag zercher squat.